Dystopia in films often reflects the imagination of future societies. The dystopian society is located in a time and space that the audience would regard as considerably worse than the current society. Dystopia often carries fears and anxieties of socio-political issues, such as the expansion and progress of technology, the intensification of the capitalist production, and the increasing control of state and capital. In many dystopian films, surveillance plays an important role of achieving certain goals of the power. This video will look at two dystopian movies from 1970s to 1990s and two dystopias from 2010s and examines different forms of surveillance in the dystopias. Also, the essay will map out how surveillance shifts in dystopia and how the dystopian film in general changed during the past decades. Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange is a dystopia about how the justice system treats deviants. The first half of the movie depicts the protagonist Alex and his gang's violent and immoral behaviors. After he is sent to jail, an aerial view of the prison unfolds the dystopia. The building contains a large tower in the center with 6 wings extending from the tower. The structure echoes Jeremy Benson's concept of panopticon, in which a guard can watch all the prisoners, but the inmates are unaware of the location of the authority. The purpose is to let the prisoners feel as if they are always being watched, and the discipline is self-sustaining. The film represents a dystopian version of the panopticon. Alex undergoes a psychological experiment which forces him to associate bad feelings with violence. Deviance becomes a kind of disease that can be cured, and Alex loses his subjectivity in the process. He is incapable of violent actions or even violent assaults. The presence of the authority figure is not necessary anymore, because the surveillance is internalized. After the treatment, Alex goes back to society, and his identity makes him not only an ideal citizen who can't do anything violent, but also a perfect victim of violence, since he won't fight back. The internalized surveillance regime makes him to take a false public persona and turns him into a machine. The fact that his old friends joined the police force shows how the authority capitalized on violence to discipline the citizens. The Ludwig technique that Alex goes through uses both mental and physical violence to change Alex, and it implies how the collusion of surveillance and violence dehumanizes an individual. As a government official says,
"We're not concerned with motives, with a higher ethics. We are concerned only with cutting down crime."
The film shows how an individual's subjectivity is sacrificed for political aims. If A Clockwork Orange exposes the close relationship between surveillance and violence, Peter Wells' The Truman Show discusses relationships among surveillance, entertainment, and capitalist consumerism. The protagonist Truman lives in a large TV set, and 5,000 cameras record his everyday life for broadcasting. Similar with Alex, his subjectivity is sacrificed to meet the needs of those in power. The movie represents a dystopian world where the cultural industry surveils an individual's every aspect of life in order to attract the audience. The diegetic TV viewer's voyeuristic gaze is in a sense cultivated by the cultural industry, but the enthusiasm also reinforces the surveillance regime. The diegetic audience embodies peer-to-peer surveillance, and they play a significant role of imprisoning Truman. If they stop watching the show, then it would be pointless to keep the show on. In the film, Truman becomes a commodity, always ready to be packaged and consumed. As his wife in the show says,
"Well, for me, there is no difference between a private life and a public life. My life is my life, is the Truman Show. The Truman Show is a lifestyle. It's a noble life."
The entertainment industry appropriates his identity as performance, and he is unaware of it. Unlike Alex, Truman does not commit any crime, but the culture industry puts him in a prison state, disguised as a paradise. This metaphor also applies to the diegetic TV audience. The only things they do in the movie is to watch the show, and they never move place. In the end of the film, when Truman escapes the panopticon, the viewers immediately seek other entertainment.
You want another slice?
No, I'm okay.
What else is on?
Yeah, let's do what else.
Where's the TV guy?
They are locked in a prison state of always seeking for new opportunities of entertainment and voyeurism. In addition, surveillance is closely tied with the expanding capitalist consumerism in the film. To record Truman's daily life gives companies perfect chances to advertise their products in the show. Everything in the show is for sale. The economic incentive keeps the show running. At the same time, makes Truman to stay in the prison state. The product placement reflects how the advertisements evolve from separated and regulated places into spaces of media production and people's daily life. Actors from the show always drink the same brand of beer, and the advertisers aim to neutralize the brand in the diegetic audience's life. The logic of capitalist consumerism dominates the production of the TV program and facilitates the dystopian state Truman lives in. The above analysis discusses two dystopian films from the last century. Recently, dystopia incorporates more conventions of genre films. In films such as Equilibrium, V for Vendetta, Elysium, they follow a generic pattern and the conflicts are resolved in a predictable fashion. The conflict is often between individuals and a totalitarian state, and the protagonists will overturn the regime in the end. Contemporary dystopias focus more on the heroic rebellion and the spectacle. Elysium is a dystopia about class division and unequal distribution of healthcare resources. The contrast between the Earth and the Elysium offers a critique of highly privatized neoliberalism ideology. The film shows how technology strengthens the surveillance regime and helps to preserve the status quo. Air drones flying on the Earth monitor the citizens' life. Law enforcement robots check the citizens to make sure they pose no threats of those in power. Also, biometric surveillance system makes it impossible for citizens on Earth to move up to the Elysium. Surveillance is a tool to serve the interests of those in privileged position and keeps the current neoliberal system functioning. The movie provides some insights on technology and surveillance. However, as a dystopia, the film is less critical than the films I mentioned above. The film's social and political settings are not developed in the plot. The focus soon shifts to the protagonist's spectacular adventures. Elysium reflects Hollywood's obsession with heroism and the white savior narrative. Max, as a traditional white hero, he is the leader of action and the only hope of those on Earth. His sacrifice eventually saves the many. Also, the film's critique on capitalism is in a process of repressive tolerance, through which the flaws of capitalism are reconciled by fantasies of romance and revolution. Many recent dystopias offer the audience pleasurable spectacles of rebellion as comfort, but fails to provide any meaningful ending or alternative systems. In the film, the hero defeats the social organization and everyone can enter the Elysium. The movie ends with a naive fantasy and renders the viewers feel as if the problems are already solved. The Hunger Games represents a dark dystopia of social control and touches on issues in terms of reality TV and celebrity culture. The state's center capital asks 12 districts to sacrifice tributes to fight in a violent game, with only one survivor. The participants' actions are recorded and surveilled by cameras. The movie shows how the panopticon evolves with advanced electronic technologies. The controllers operate an interactive map console of the game's arena to monitor and regulate the tribute's behaviors. Unlike Truman, the heroine Katniss knows that she is under surveillance, and she realizes that in order to survive in the game, she has to play with the rules. She loses her subjectivity on the civilians, and she performs a fake persona based on what the audience might enjoy. The surveillance regime disciplines individuals to perform as an ideal celebrity that can be consumed by the viewers. Similar to Elysium, this movie also features the dystopian society as the background of the characters' adventures. The reasons behind the exploitative system and details of its functioning remains unclear. Recent dystopias such as The Divergent, Maze Runner shows a tendency of the hyper genre with teen films. These movies capitalize on dystopian narrative elements to present a dark future, but do not engage with serious political issues. The plotline often incorporates romance and rebellion as means to defeat the evil regime, and focuses more on the characters' spectacle adventures. In conclusion, this video examines how dystopian films warn the dehumanizing effects of surveillance regime. Dystopian movies explore the complex relationships among civilians, political control, and neoliberal capitalism. By contrasting dystopias from the last century with films from the past decade, the essay shows how recent dystopias lean toward genre movies and become less critical. Dystopian films are imagination of the future societies, and it is important to look at how these films portray the futures as they are grounded on present socio-political reality.